The answer is not anymore. So the biological process of reproduction is enveloped in a personal process of the body's self-giving of two human beings, as we have known it all through generations. That's how we know human beings to exist. That's how they come to be. So since the biochemical part of this totality, again I will watch this carefully, the biochemical part of this totality has been successfully isolated in the laboratory, another question arises. So what before would require normally, reasonably, man and woman uniting, coming together in that co-creative act, and then you have a human being. Well, that biochemical process has been now isolated and can be done in a lab. So the question who is, do I need a man? Do I need a woman? So this is where we're going. So the new question arises, how necessary is the connection between the biological and the personal? Is it really necessary anymore? If you want a child, is the biological and the physical necessary anymore? Do you need, a man who is going to give you a hard time? Do you need a woman who is going to nag you all the time? Or you just go shopping for a baby? Because it has been isolated, that biochemical process.
Did you see a recent commercial that was supposedly like a fair? They had one of those machines, 50 cents in, they're going to pick something out and drop it in. They had a guy picking out a baby. All these little teddy bears, and he picks up a baby and drop it.
Vending machine for babies. Okay. But realistically, that's what's happening. You want a baby with what? Long hair? With type of eyes?
What about a married couple and the wife can't carry a baby? They can conceive, but they can't carry a baby. There's a thing now that they can, the embryo, they can produce an embryo and plant it in a woman that can carry their child.
Okay, keep that question, okay? We'll get to it later, okay?
Thank you.
If we don't ask it again, okay? But we will, okay? Yes, we are following the book here, okay? So since this biochemical part of this totality has been successfully isolated in the laboratory, another question arises. How necessary is the connection between the biological and the personal? Is it essential to the event as such? Okay? Should and must it be so? Or have we here a case of what Hegel was a philosopher, German philosopher, Hegel calls the trick of nature, which uses human beings' attraction to one another as it uses the wind or the bees as a means to transport seed in the plant world. So basically, what Hegel here, what we're referring to is that your attraction to a woman or a man is simply a trick of nature. Nature tricks you so that the species may be perpetuated. But now we have discovered what the trick of nature is. Okay? So now that attraction is no longer for producing babies. The trick of nature is now for your self-aggrandizement. Not necessarily for producing babies, because we have now discovered how the bees transport pollen. Okay? So, you get that. So we like bees in the plant world. We know how pollen is transferred from one to the other. So now the trick of nature has been isolated, identified in a lab. So what is the purpose of human sexuality? Your personal aggrandizement, satisfaction. It's no longer about procreation, because we know how to do that elsewhere. So you see these dangers. Do you need to get married anymore? Why get married? Okay? So you see the dangers of these things. So can one claim that an isolated cell process is the only really important element in this union? And can one accordingly replace this natural process with other rationally directed methods? The Pope asks. Various counter questions arise here. That's why I love Benedict. He is like a Thomas Aquinas. You ask a question, then a counter question. So he leads you into a deeper understanding of what is at stake. Then various counter questions arise here. Can one designate the coming together of man and woman as a mere natural process, whereby the psychic turning to each other of the two would be also merely a trick of nature which deceives them, so that they are not acting as persons, but merely as individuals within a species? So there is no personal basic encounter. Nature is simply tricking you, but there is nothing personal about the process. You are simply tricked to reproduce. So, or must we say exactly the opposite? Must we not say that in the love of two people and the spiritual freedom from which it comes, now those words are key. Love between two people, the spiritual freedom, is an act of freedom. Whereas these other people are simply saying that it's a trick of nature, therefore it's an act of necessity. So in the end, it is an act of necessity. If you are a man and you are attracted to a woman, that's the woman you want, she has to like you. In other words, in the end, we'll be justifying things like rape. Well, she's the one I want. Nature has tricked me for her. How can she say no? Because there is simply necessity, there is no freedom involved. It's just a reproduction. So we'll become like chickens, chasing, running after one another. Because that's the chicken I want. So there won't be any denial. I did not cross that road with that chicken. So you see, these people are dumb. So science eliminates the bad science, is eliminating basically freedom out of the act. And if freedom is gone, what remains is necessity. And if it's necessity, don't blame me. Okay? Don't blame me. This is what nature does. Or must we say exactly the opposite? Must we not say that in the love of two people and the spiritual freedom from which it comes, a new dimension of reality comes into being, a new dimension of reality, not something reproduced, which is like the previous one, but a new dimension of reality comes into being, which corresponds to it, meaning to love and freedom, which corresponds to it. That the child too is not simply a repetition of invariant information, but a person in the newness and the freedom of an I, forming a new center in the world. So you see that question is very important. Because if it is simple repetition, I can, right now, I'm a woman, I'm not ready for this child. I can eliminate this child because a few years from now I will be ready and I can reproduce another one. Did you get it? It's like I can't afford it now, but I will buy one later. It's the same thing. There's no uniqueness to this particular child I'm going to get rid of because I will get another one. I'll shop for another one later. Because there is no freedom involved, it's simple necessity. Okay? Is it not simply a repetition of invariant information, but a person in the newness of the freedom of an I? Because that is what happens. Africans, forming a new center of the world. So many people, including many Catholics by the way, criticize the church, especially during election times. The church is just a single issue, institution. They are always about abortion. That's why, by the way, you see these people, the Pope Francis said something about like abortion and homosexuality, and said that it should be put in the context of the whole teaching of the church. Because sometimes if we isolate it and not see the whole, then in the end, we end up being like the people we are fighting. They are hateful people, we become hateful. So that's what basically he was saying. But the media want to frame him as if he was saying that abortion and homosexuality and all those other issues are not all that important. That's not what he said. Okay? That they must be put in the context of the whole. That's what he was saying. So, the church is a single issue. How would you answer that? Are we a single issue institution?
Not at all.
In this regard, yes. Why? Because if we don't take account of this issue, if you don't take care of this issue, then there are no issues to talk about. In other words, if we are dead, there are no rights to talk about. There are no duties to talk about. There is no freedom to talk about. Okay? That's why the church is so strong on the issue of life. Because without life, there is nothing to talk about.
You don't need freedom and you don't need
This,
Life.
you are not going to talk about the good social program for the dead. I've never had one. Okay? The good economy for the bailout for the dead. There's nothing like that. Okay? What are you going to talk about?
You don't need pursuit of happiness.
You can talk about the Constitution which says the right to life, to liberty and the pursuit of happiness.
You need the first one.
When you are on a dumpster, flesh, baby thrown there. So what are you going to talk about if you're not talking about life? So if you circumvent the issue of life, you have no other issue to talk about. Even the people who were not like priests or bishops, they saw that, that is the right to life, to freedom, and the pursuit of happiness. But then pursuit of happiness can be defined in different things, different ways. But if it's properly understood, it's understood as pursuing God Himself, who is our happiness. So that's why the church talks about life, and it sticks to life in order to talk about other duties and rights. Because without life, there's nothing left. We want to come up with these good social programs for the people. Which ones? The ones you are killing? Who will benefit? So that's why the church, I didn't mean that it only sticks on that one issue, but every other issue depends on that one issue. Even people who support abortion, they do so because they are alive. Okay? But they are extremely selfish, that they want everything for themselves, forgetting that they will be dead in a few years' time. I told you one time I was in Columbus, Ohio. There was this woman, these militant feminists. She was, the world is overpopulated. We need to control populations. By the way, do you know that currently, all the people, I think we talked about this before, all the people in the whole world, all the people, with this much space between each other, like this space, between each other. That much space, left and right. All the people in the world can fit in the state of Texas with that much room between each other. All the world population fits in Texas state with that much space, not congregated like this. So where is the overpopulation? It's not there. It's a lie. It's the distribution of resources. It is the selfishness of humans. So never be lied to that we are overpopulated. So when this woman wrote that argument, I was so angry with her. I was tired of listening to her. Okay? I said, okay, what is overpopulated? Yes. So humans are part of the pollution process. I told her, why don't you volunteer? She was so angry with me. Why don't you volunteer? In other words, why don't you die? So that others may have room.
There was this bumper sticker that said, all those who are pro-choice are already born.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's extremely selfish. But the ideology that drives that movement is what we are looking at here. It's just a simple cells. It's a reproduction. You'll get another one if you wish at any time in your life. Okay? So, just get rid of